Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast, episode 15. My name is Yuriy, and I'm joined by Keishi.
Hey Yuri, how are you today?
It's a little hot today. I'm doing okay with my peach water and my coffee and my mango drink.
That's good. Yeah, it's like 30 something degrees.
Have you been outside today?
No, not at all. Oh, actually, I'm just checking the weather app. It says 36 degrees. There's no way I'm going outside anytime soon.
Well, that sounds like a good plan for today. What are you drinking?
Yeah,
Just to make sure we cover the important details.
just water. I'm boring today.
All right. But water may or may not be boring, but today's topic is not exactly boring. Today's topic is money. We're going to be talking about just because you're earning money with your side hustle, does it mean you actually have money?
Yeah, or to rephrase it, it doesn't mean that you get to keep all of the money.
Yeah. And the reason why we want to talk about this topic, first of all, Keishi's very good with accounting and does his own books. And myself, also being involved in side hustles, you have to get intimate with your own finances in order to understand how your side hustle is doing. Keishi, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think especially once your site starts growing, because when it's like $0 or $50 a month or something, then there's not much accounting to do, or there's not much numbers to understand. But I think once you start getting into the $500, $1,000, $2,000, or whatever sort of levels, I think it gets pretty important to actually understand where is the money coming from. Like, is it coming all from one source, or is it diversified within the one side, or is it coming all from one side, or is it diversified across a number of sites and things like that? Is it seasonal and stuff like that? But anyways, that's not what we're talking about today. As much as we'd love to keep talking about income forever, I think there's also the other side of the equation, which is where does the money that you earn actually go? Does it all go into your pocket? Do you have to spend it on some things, or do you have to pay it to your government, or what do you have to do with it? So I think that's what we'll be looking closer at today, right?
Yeah. So the first point that we have is what can or what should you do with the revenues that your side hustle earns? So obviously most of us, or not, if not all, most of us, all of us are in it for the side hustles to earn a bit more money for ourselves, right? So that's one thing you could do with the revenue if you could pay yourself.
I think paying ourselves is probably the primary reason we're doing these things. But that said, it's kind of, I guess, last on my list of priorities, at least at this point. And I think there's essentially 4 things that you can or that you have to do with your side hustle revenues at one point or another. And the first one that probably most people hate the most is, of course, paying taxes. Because just like any other income that you make at your job or your freelancing or whatever, it's income, so you have to pay taxes on it generally. And we'll be going into this deeper. So you have to pay taxes, and then you have to pay some sort of expenses to keep your business running, whether that's paying for bookkeeping if that's not what you're doing yourself, or paying for some sort of software for keyword research, or for equipment, for camera and things like that, maybe for web hosting. And then 3, there's money that you can put back into the business. So not necessarily to maintain the operation, like paying for web hosting does, for example, but to grow the operation. So paying for writers or paying for content and things like that. So you can reinvest the money back into the business to hopefully get some higher amount back in the future. Yeah. And then the last one is paying yourself, the reason that we're all in this business for. And I'd say they kind of go in this order, especially when you're starting out.
So taxes, expenses, reinvesting, and yourself, right?
Yeah.
So those are the 4 things you can do with your revenue that you earn from your side hustle. Here's a quick question in regards to expenses. I feel like a lot of people would want to keep their expenses down or as low as possible. Is it possible for someone to have little to no expenses? What do you think? Like, let's say in a case of a side hustle, if you're an artist or if you're a blogger, is it possible to keep your expenses super low down to 0 or not?
Yeah, so it's definitely possible to keep your expenses very low in the beginning, right? Because part of the reason that all this is so attractive is that essentially, theoretically, all you need is a domain and web hosting, and you can start your business. And those are things that cost $20, $30, $40. But at the same time, as your business grows, as your side hustle grows, so will your expenses likely grow. So you might need to upgrade your hosting to a better one, or you might need to buy some tools to help you with doing certain parts of your business, or you might even not need to, but it would make financial sense, right? Because if you can buy a, I don't know, $100 per month tool to save you like 10 hours of your time, then that generally a pretty good investment, right?
Yeah.
Or that generally money pretty well spent. So I think, yeah, if you're just starting out, then your budget is very limited and you want to get something off the ground, then I totally think it's possible to bootstrap it. Like I talked about one of the sites that I built from scratch numerous times here. And like with that one, I think the only real expenses in the beginning were the web hosting because I wrote the content myself in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think as your side hustle grows, then there comes a point where it's better to spend money than to spend your own time, or where it makes more sense to buy a tool or to pay for a tool than to try to hack something together using free tools.
So essentially, it's like a natural law that the bigger you get, the more expenses you take on. Would you say so?
Yeah, you could say so. But then again, I wouldn't necessarily correlate it 100% directly because, of course, you want to keep your expenses as low as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's what happens a lot with people in general outside the business sphere is like with like lifestyle inflation or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody earns like $50,000 a year and their lifestyle is kind of adjusted to that, and then they get promoted and they start earning, let's say, $70,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
then they kind of naturally upgrade their lifestyle, and essentially the profit they get to keep, the money they get to save, or the money they get to invest in their brokerage account or whatever stays the same or shrinks, right? Because their lifestyle gets more expensive. So I think it's important to avoid that, of course, in life in general, but also in side hustle. Like just because you had your first $200 month shouldn't mean that you go out there and jump from like a free tool to like a $200 a month tool. It should all be driven by like, does it make sense? And is it a good decision?
Okay. I think in the case of blogs, let's say someone can start a free WordPress blog and pay nothing for the .com, and they can start writing some articles on affiliate marketing, let's say, and they use affiliate marketing. Let's say those articles start ranking and they earn, say, $50 or $200 a month through like a something.wordpress.com free domain. So they literally did nothing. And so, I mean, they invested nothing except their time. So at that point, their expenses could be at zero.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's possible, but I would highly recommend not doing that because the time, money, and effort that you will spend later on, if this thing succeeds, transferring it to your own domain and then like risking the fact that Google might decide not to rank your new site as well as it did your WordPress.com subdomain blog or whatever, I think it's not worth the risk, and that's close to being like penny wise pound foolish sort of thing, where you try to save like $20 in the beginning for your own domain when what you're trying to do is really just build something that earns you $500,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, and then looking back, that sum of money is really close to zero. And I think almost anybody can somehow put together money to buy their first domain and to buy their first hosting.
Yeah.
So I would avoid that.
Okay. So we just covered the 4 places you can apply your revenues to. So pay taxes, expenses, reinvesting, and pay yourself. And I see you have taxes as the first thing on the list, right?
Yeah. So I think out of the 4 that we mentioned here, if you make any money, then I think only one is not optional, and that's taxes, right? So I think that's where it's important to start. And there's a couple of things that are worth noting here. One of them being that and I think you know this better than I do, is if you have a regular full-time job and then you earn a side income, then whereas at your job people take care of your taxes, if you earn a side income for your own business as kind of a self-employed person or as a sole proprietor or whatever you want to call it, then you have to file your own taxes, you have to pay them and things like that, right?
Now, I think this kind of goes into a bigger point. So from my perspective, and I think from many side hustlers, anyone that wants to have a side hustle, to them, they want to supplement their income or boost their income. So that side hustle is kind of a way for them to earn more money. But just because you earn more money through a side hustle doesn't mean you have more money.
So does it mean that you have more money? Yeah, of course it does, because there's probably no country in the world that has like 100% tax rate or something. But at the same time, it can be pretty demotivating knowing that every dollar you earn or whatever is essentially going to be split in half or split in a third or something. and that the government is going to take part of that, and that you just get to keep the rest, right? So, do you have more money in absolute terms? Absolutely. If you make $1,000 and you have to pay 50% in taxes, you still have $500 more in your pocket, or to spend on your business or something. But at the same time, you don't have to keep all your money, because just as with your job, it's taxable income, right? And
Yeah.
and I think here we should just say that we're not tax advisors or anything like that. So this is for entertainment purposes only, and you should do your own research and talk to your own tax advisors and things like that. That should be said here. But
and protect yourself. Consult your own tax advisor. We are not your advisors.
Protect yourself. But yeah, so you definitely don't get to keep 100% of your income. But at the same time, you get to keep a decent portion of it. So if it comes down to, should I not do side hustle because the government's going to take part of my money, then the answer is you definitely should do a side hustle, because no matter what you do and no matter how much you earn money, the government is going to take a certain portion of it.
I guess the only difference is with because we're both of us are in Japan, and Japanese companies do your taxes for you. So we, in terms of like filing overall the taxes, the employee is very much removed. It's like, because it's all done for him, right? But in the case of if you have a side hustle, then you're much more hands-on. Then it starts getting real, because you have to like file and pay and do the whole process. So with the work, it feels like, you're not involved. It almost feels invisible, because it's like you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. So I've kind of been self-employed my whole life, so I had to file my taxes and stuff like that. But even then, there are some clients that withhold 10% of the income and pay to the government, so that counts towards whatever we have to pay in taxes. And there are some that don't. But if you're an employee of a company, then I think you're absolutely right, which is, as we said earlier, if you work for a company, they take care of all your taxes in general, which means that whatever hits your bank account is the money that you get to keep. And potentially you might be able even to apply for some tax refund at the end of the year. But anyways, whatever hits your bank account is what you get to keep. Whereas with the side hustle, whatever hits your account is generally not what you get to keep, right? It's something that you have to pay taxes on, unless you spend it on business expenses, which we'll talk about later. Yeah, so it can be a bit confusing, because if your job pays you, let's say, $3,000 a month into your bank account, then that's what you get to keep. Whereas if your side hustle earns you $3,000 a month, then you likely have to pay like $1,000 or something in taxes. But then again, you have to think about it critically and realize that the $3,000 you're getting into your bank account from your real job probably means that you're making like $4,500 or $5,000 gross, right? Before the employee deducts all the taxes. So so at the end of the day, regardless of how you earn the money, you have to pay some sort of tax. And as we'll discuss a bit later, I think as a self-employed person, or when it comes to money that you earn from side hustles, there's actually some ways where you can pay comparatively less tax than you would if you were just an employee, right? So I think at first it can be kind of scary, it can be confusing, but once you learn how the tax system works, I think you can actually use it for your advantage rather than having to dread paying taxes. You can think of it as whatever money you reinvest into the business, whatever money you spend on business expenses, that's all stuff that you essentially got at a discount, as we'll talk about later.
Just to summarize this point, just because you're earning more money with a side hustle doesn't mean you have more money. The answer is, in absolute terms, yes, but not all of it you get to keep, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one last thing I want to mention here before we move on is that if this is a side hustle for you, right? And let's say you earn $30,000 a year or $40,000 a year or something from your job, then from that $40,000, probably like $20,000 taxed at a really low rate, because it's like essentially to cover your basic living expenses, sort of. And then the tax gets progressively higher, right? So let's say in Japan, for example, the national tax is just 5% for income earned up to like 1.95 million yen. And then it goes up to 10% for income between that and 3.3 million yen. And then it gets to 20% for 3.3 to almost 7 million yen. And what it means is that at your job, they do all your calculation probably based on like the 5%, 10%, maybe 20% rate, right? Depending on how much you earn. But then the side hustle income that you earn on top of that, what it means is it's taxed at the higher rate, right? So let's say at your job, you earn $40,000, right? And with all the deductions and like basic deductions for like having family members and things like that, let's say your effective tax rate comes to like 10%, which means you pay $4,000 in taxes on the $40,000 that you earn at your job, or you get to keep 36,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then whatever income you earn from your side hustle, that's on top of the $40,000, right? So it's automatically in the whatever the highest tax bracket was that your original income was taxed on.
Yeah.
So rather than paying like effectively 10% on this incremental income, you have to pay the actual highest or the actual applicable tax bracket, which might be 20%. So it might end up being where your salary at your job, they take away $4,000 and you're done with taxes for that portion. But for your side hustle, you earn $10,000, but you have to pay $2,000 to the government, which would be like 20%. And I think that can be another part that's confusing.
So essentially, if you're earning quite a bit from your job, and if you are taxed at a higher rate because of your job, that means like you pay a lot more taxes on the side hustle than you would if you had a lower paying job, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, you just have to add up all the incomes that you have, right? And based on that, the tax bracket is determined. And like if your job takes care of all of your main income, then the higher that is, the higher tax bracket any sort of incremental income is for you. And essentially, all of the side hustle income is an income on top of whatever you make at your job, right? So the tax rate might appear higher, I guess.
Okay. So I guess to anyone that's earning a lot more, starting a side hustle for them would not exactly be very motivating unless they were very passionate about a certain topic or hustle.
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, getting to keep 70% of something is better than getting to keep 100% of nothing. So
True.
I wouldn't phrase it as it's not motivating, but it can definitely be a bit of a demotivator, especially in the beginning until you kind of get used to it.
That's true. What you have next thing you have here is a dollar you earn is not a dollar in your pocket unless you reinvest it.
Exactly, and I think that kind of takes us to the next part, which is the taxes you pay generally are on your profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if there are some expenses that your business has, then you don't have to pay tax on that amount.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you start to understand that, and once you start to understand how you can spend money on your business to make more money in the future or to make your job easier,
mm-hmm.
then taxes become less of a problem because you start seeing it as a discount on whatever things it is that you need to buy to make your business work or that you need to make your business grow. And yeah, so a dollar you earn is not a dollar in your pocket if you decide to put it into your pocket. But if you decide to keep it in the business and within the year you spend it on some sort of business expenses,
mm-hmm.
then a dollar buys you a dollar, right?
To me, that's a pretty fascinating concept because I've, for the most part, saved what I earn. But so that's one way to look at it. If you save what you earn, you pay a lot more because essentially you're taking it in as personal income, right?
Yeah.
However, if you put that back in, then you pay less taxes on it. But at the same time, you also, if you do it smarter, if you invest into like a certain tool that helps you produce work faster or something, again, it's like you end up earning more, right? There's a possibility of that. So you keep your taxes lower and you stand a chance of earning more money if you invest into something productive.
Yeah, exactly. And my favorite example here is like buying a laptop, right? For blogging or something. So let's say you buy a $1,000 laptop to keep the math simple.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say the tax rate is 20%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an employee and you want to buy a $1,000 laptop, then you have to earn $1,250, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then pay like $250 in taxes, and that leaves you the $1,000 to buy the computer for $1,000, right? Again, so you have to earn $1,250 to buy a $1,000 computer because you have to pay the taxes on that, and then you're left with the $1,000 to buy the $1,000 computer.
Yeah.
Now imagine you're running a side hustle that requires a computer and it's a necessary business expense because whether you're doing YouTube or whether you're doing blogging or whatever it is that you're doing, a computer is a necessary machine, right? It's like your hammer, or it's like it's the main tool you use for a business essentially.
Yeah.
And that makes the computer a business expense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now let's think about buying the exact same $1,000 computer. What it means is that you have to make $1,000 in revenues or in income, right? Instead of the $1,250. So you make $1,000 in revenues, and then you buy the $1,000 computer. But not only that, but because you spend $1,000 on the computer and it's a business expense, your tax gets lower, right? Because you don't have to pay tax on the $1,000.
Yeah, because you used it on a business expense, not and you didn't pocket it.
Exactly. So you essentially bought the computer at a 20% discount.
Yeah.
So the computer cost you effectively $800. Yeah. So that I think that's kind of my favorite example of how once you kind of flip your thinking around taxes and around like making money for some sort of venture, for some sort of side hustle, for some sort of business, you can kind of soften the blow, I guess. Because it would still be, of course, nice to be able to keep the $1,000 in your pocket without having to pay any taxes, but that's just not realistic, right?
Yeah.
Unless you move to like Monaco or something,
Yeah.
I guess. So I think the next best thing is using the money for some sort of business-related expenses.
Here's a quick question, right? So the smarter approach is to invest the earnings back into the business because you end up paying less taxes because you're using that money for business expenses instead of on yourself. Let's say someone is doing a side hustle to supplement their income. In a way, it almost seems like it's a nonstop cycle of earn and then have your expenses, do your expenses properly to earn more and only to put it back into the business to earn more, to only put it back into the business to earn more, to only put it back into the business to earn more. What do you think about that? Is that a bad way to look at it?
I think that's definitely one way to look at it, and I think here it really depends on kind of where are you in your life, where are you in your financial situation, what are your goals, what are your aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
Like if all you want to do is earn $100 extra a month to be able to afford like a nice dinner or something, then just build a site that makes $150 and pay $50 in taxes and enjoy your dinner. I think that's great if that's what you want. If you're kind of struggling financially and you need side hustle to supplement your income and to help you pay your bills, then again, you probably don't want to build a blog because it takes time to get it off the ground. You probably want to do something like freelancing, earn the money, pay your taxes, and keep the rest and put it towards your bills or something, right? Because you definitely don't want to go into debt or something just because somebody told you to reinvest money into your business, because that would just be stupid, right?
Yeah.
But then again, so like I think in your case you're earning like you have a full-time job, so that's pretty much covering your living expenses, right? Let's say.
Yeah.
In that case, I think it's better to just reinvest the side hustle money and grow it into something bigger and bigger and bigger, so that at some point in the future you can take exponentially more than you could today, rather than having to pay like 40 or 30% to the government right away.
Yeah, I think it's in the 40s.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around that in general. So yeah, I'd say that it really depends on your situation, and I think at some point you realize that there's only so much expenses that you have at this point, and all the money you earn on top of that, you essentially have three choices to do with it, right? You can either reinvest it back into your business, or you can take it out of your business, pay taxes, and save it, or you can, so there's four options, or you can take it out of your business and invest it into like stocks or something through like a regular account, or you can take it out of your business and reinvest it into stocks through a tax advantaged account. Like in the US, I think there's like 401k or IRA or something. And like here in Japan, we have IDECO. And in that case, it's essentially decreasing your taxes while you get to pull out your money. Now then again, it's a retirement account, so you can't touch the money until like 40 years later or something, 20 years later. But still, you can take the money out of the business without reinvesting it, yet avoid having to pay taxes on the money. So those are kind of the four options you have. But yeah, personally, I think unless you really need the money from your side hustle, I just keep reinvesting it until you build something that actually reaches the level of your main income, or makes it higher than your main income, or whatever level you want to bring that to. But then again, that's just me, and I kind of enjoy the process of building things more than just being able to get whatever $500 extra or something.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So it's like it really depends on what the person wants. You know, if they want to have $100 dinner every month or so, or if they want to pay for a vacation. You know, if they just want to enjoy life a bit more, they just have to earn a little bit more to pay the taxes on that and then pay themselves and afford that dinner or vacation. Or if they're more so inclined to grow a little asset or grow a little business, then it makes more sense to put the money back into the business and grow it and pay a little less tax on that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it really depends on your situation, because like I think you were mentioning on one of the previous episodes that you used your side hustle income to pay off your student loan, right? If I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great example where it totally makes sense to just take out the money, pay the taxes, and spend the rest of the money towards paying off your student loan. I think that's like one. I think it can be very motivating, as I think you were mentioning before.
Yeah.
And two, it totally makes sense to just get rid of your debt and just whatever extra money it is that you're making, just put it towards paying the debt. But then again, once the debt is paid off,
Yeah.
like and you keep making the same whatever $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 or whatever a month through your side hustle, then you're back to having the option of taking the $1,000 out, paying 30% in taxes or 40% in taxes, and spending the $600 on, I don't know, jeans, lattes, and dinners and whatever, or spending that $1,000 on content or some other things that will make you more money in the future, right?
Or you could, just another idea, you could start another side hustle that you will, if you have one already kind of going and you have a system behind it, so it's like rolling by itself in a way with some intervention on your part, you can go ahead and reinvest that into another project.
Yeah, exactly. So when I say expenses or reinvestment, I'm not necessarily referring to like the exact same side that made you the money in the first place or something.
Yeah.
What I just mean here is that you should spend the money to make more money, essentially, right?
So just to conclude it, really depends up to you and what you want to achieve. If you want to have more money on the side for dinner, or if you want to continue growing a business, that's up to you. But again, we covered expenses just a bit. I see on the notes here you have two types of expenses, right?
Yeah. So I think it's worth diving a bit deeper into what do you have to spend your money on when it comes to your side hustle or business in general. And I guess you could say there's two types of expenses, right? There's expenses that are for maintenance, that don't necessarily increase your income, but that keep your business running, that keep your machine running. And then there's expenses that are meant to fuel growth, right? Or technically you could say it's investment, right? So you put money in and expect more money in return. And so for the maintenance expenses, you could have stuff like, again, you could have like buying a computer or paying for web hosting, paying for some tools that you use kind of on a monthly basis and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And those are generally pretty fixed, right? It's not like unless you go really crazy with hiring or something, it's not like they fluctuate a lot. Like there's really only so much you can pay for hosting and for software tools and things like that. But where I think it really gets interesting, especially if you're running a content business, is expenses that fuel future growth, right? So hiring a writer, let's say, or buying an article. Those are expenses that you can kind of control. So like if you're doing very well, you can buy more articles, right? If your business starts doing worse, then you buy less articles to keep it profitable or to keep it break even or whatever your target is in those regards. But again, I think it's the investment in growth that's really interesting because with the computer, I think it was a good example with the computer, but at the same time, you buy the computer and the computer starts losing value right away, right? It's like with a car. The moment you drive it off the lot, it's lost like 50% of its value, probably, right?
And then 1 year in, a button stops working, start having bugs.
But now imagine buying a $100 article, right? So let's say I make $100 in revenue today, and I have the option of either taking the money for myself, which means that the $100 that I made probably results in like $60 in my wallet, or I can spend that $100 to buy an article from somebody, pay somebody $100 to write an article for me. Now, blogs generally sell for like 25 to 35 times their revenues. That means that if the article gets to a point where it makes $3 per month, the article itself is worth $100 within your site, right? It adds $100 in value to your site.
Yeah.
But not only that, but the article really only costs you $60 because if you decided to take the money out, you would only get $60 because you would have to pay taxes. Whereas if you decide to keep the money in and buy the article, then the $100 gets you $100 worth of value from somebody else. So you already saved like 40% right there just by buying the article, just by converting the money into an article.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but you also build value for the future, hopefully.
Yeah.
Of course, not 100% guaranteed that the article will catch or whatever, but on average, let's say, right? If you're running a profitable site, then on average, you will have built some sort of value and some sort of cash flow for the future.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Where very essentially say, I don't need the money right now. I want more money in the future. So I'm going to hire somebody to write that article. And in return for that, you don't have to pay the $40 in taxes. So there's some return right there. And then there's the future benefits of that article.
Like, let's say that article ranks on Google and starts making sales. or helps you bring in sales, whether you're collecting leads or directly to, I don't know, products sold. Or you could take that article later on, you could base a course off of it, or you could base a book off of it.
Yeah, exactly. Or just let me give you like an example. Like on one of my sites, I have like a bunch of articles that I probably paid like $40 to get written, and they're making me like $20-$30 every month now.
Yeah.
Without anything, right? And again, when I ordered that article, I had the chance of taking those $40 and putting $25 in my pocket after paying taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could just say, oh, okay, I'm gonna wait. I don't need the money right now, so I'm just gonna wait, and I'm gonna pay somebody else instead, and somebody else can use that money to pay their bills or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna give up that money for now, and I'm gonna convert it into content. And now that content's making me like 10, 20, 30 times more than what I put into it, right?
That's a pretty impressive investment asset. One would almost think there should be investment firms that exist or are not built around financial assets, but are built around content. If that's the way I know it's not a sure shot. It's not a guaranteed thing that an article will rank or earn it all. But overall, it sounds like a really good investment.
Yeah, definitely. Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of those are investing in creating an infrastructure to monetize content.
All right, so we just covered two types of expenses. There's maintenance, for example, paying for your website costs or buying a computer, anything to keep your business or side hustle running. And then there's the growth, the investment, where you purchase things, whether it's assets, articles, and whatnot, that don't make immediate money up front, but will eventually make you money later on down the road.
Yeah, I think so. But essentially, the investment part is money that you don't have to spend, but you can spend. You can give it up now to get more later.
And then finally, you have yourself. So that's the last place to send money to. If it's not expenses, if it's not investment, it's back to yourself. So here's a question. I think that anyone listening, if they have a side hustle or if they're thinking about a side hustle, they're probably thinking, oh, wow, okay, so I have to pay tax on this stuff. How do I pay myself? They might wonder that. How does one decide? It almost sounds like a personal decision, as we talked about earlier. What exactly is your position in life? What exactly do you want?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we went for a bunch of examples throughout this episode. It really depends on what your situation is. It really depends on how much you need the money at this point right now. And the only thing to keep in mind here is that especially if you're a sole proprietor, then essentially all the money goes straight to you first, right?
Yeah.
So I think kind of a discipline to be able to manage that money is really important, because you got to realize that whatever money comes to you, part of it is not yours. Part of it is the government's, whether it's the American government or the Japanese government or whatever government, right? So if you get $1,000 paycheck from Amazon, let's say, just realize that not all $1,000 is yours. I think that's the critical first step. The second step is you also have to pay some expenses to maintain your business, like we were talking about. And then the third step is essentially deciding whether you're going to pocket the money, so you're going to report it as income and pay the taxes on it and then do whatever you want with it, or whether you're going to keep the money inside the business and invest it into content or something. But again, I think the only rule here is that no matter what you decide to do with the rest, the taxes are
first.
The taxes, and you have to pay them, right? Unless you want to be taken away in handcuffs. I
think the challenging part here is you really have to plan ahead, because you pay for last year, so you file and you always file for the previous year, and then you pay for the previous year. I think that's the challenging part, or that's the counterintuitive part, is how far you have to plan ahead. Because if you receive $10 now, that's not your $10 completely. You have to take a portion of that $10, say $4, and place those $4 in a piggy bank that you absolutely cannot touch.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think if you receive $1,000 check, inside your head it's kind of like, oh wow, I got $1,000, but you got to be like, oh wow, I've got $600, and I got to stash those $400 other dollars somewhere away, because Uncle Sam or Abe or somebody's gonna come and pick the money up next year.
Yeah.
So you got to realize that, because I've heard of people that have gotten into a lot of financial troubles. So let's say this year you're doing really well and you make $100,000, right? That $100,000, something you will have to pay taxes on next year after you file the taxes, right? After you tell the government how much you made. And let's say the government says you have to pay $25,000.
Mm-hmm.
all would be pretty good if next year you earn $100,000 again and again and again, and you just keep spending that money on your last year's taxes.
Yeah.
That would be all good. But now imagine that this year you make $100,000, but next year Google decides to change their algorithm and your income goes down to $25,000. Then you're in a bit of a trouble, right? Because you still have to pay last year's $25,000 in taxes, but you also only made $25,000 this year.
Yeah.
So you have to spend all of that money on last year's taxes, but you still also owe taxes on the $25,000 that you made this year.
Yeah.
So you got yourself into a bit of a trouble there. So rather than doing that, you just got to essentially keep stashing money away in the year that you make it so that you can just move it over to the government the year after when you file the taxes for the previous year.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, at one point or another, you will get into a situation where your income goes down drastically and you have no money to pay for last year's taxes.
So essentially, a rule of thumb is for every, say, dollar you get, you find out that percentage that you got to pay, and you have to methodically put that percentage out and put it into an account that you can't access or that's dedicated for specifically paying off taxes.
Exactly. So I think, for me, it would probably be somewhere in the 40 something percent range, probably for you as well. But again, it really depends on the country, and it also really depends on how much you're making with your other stuff and things like that. So whether you have children, whether you have a wife, whether you're whatever all sorts of deductions there are and things like that. So you really should talk to an accountant. I think if you make more than $1,000 or $2,000, then you should definitely spend at least some time talking to an accountant, trying to understand the situation you are in.
Yeah, agreed. We are not professionals. We are not your advisors. This is purely an informational podcast, and no, not just informational, entertaining. So do not take our information 100%. You have to confirm it with your own accountant who has went through your own numbers and understands your situation, because we don't understand and we don't have the education to understand.
Yeah, and don't be cheap, because let's say the accountant tells you he charges $200 or $300 or $400 per hour, and you go like, oh wow, that's so expensive. But talking to him for that 1 hour will probably save you thousands of dollars in the future. So again, don't be cheap in this regard, because I think once you understand how taxes work, then it will motivate you to reinvest more money back into your business so that you have to pay less taxes, and overall it will just help you grow your business.
So if you've already started your side hustle, or if you're thinking about it, as soon as you start earning your first dollar or so, there are 4 places that your revenues will go. First is the taxes, 2, expenses, 3, reinvesting, and finally, yourself. You want to take that?
Yeah, exactly. So as we said before, the taxes are non-optional in most cases, and the rest, it will depend on how you balance them. And personally, I do it in this order. So of course, I have to pay taxes on whatever is left over as profit, and then I have to pay some sort of regular expenses to keep the business running. And then I try to reinvest as much as possible into the business to grow it further, and then I pay myself. But that's also not how everyone does it, and there's a bunch of different kind of approaches to this, I guess you could say. And one of the approaches that seems to be pretty popular these days, I have yet to read the book, but I've read a bunch about it, and it's called Profit First. So you can find the book if you Google Profit First. But that one actually says you should decide what percentage you want to keep yourself, and then adjust your expenses to match that, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of work backwards from whatever you want to keep for yourself, and then work backwards towards to adjust the expenses to that and to kind of balance it out. And I think it's good if you're in a situation where you're making a lot of money, let's say, but you keep reinvesting it all. It can be really easy to just keep reinvesting, and never take any money out of the business, and that's not good either, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, at least in my situation right now, I feel like I'm much better off for like 5, 10, 15 years ahead if I just keep reinvesting. Mm-hmm. So I really don't try to keep much profit left. In fact, I try to minimize the profit as much as possible, because the way I personally look at it is every article I buy is like instant 40% return, because I don't have to pay the taxes on it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. I'm approaching this from the kind of the beginner's mindset, because you're the more experienced one here, and I think maybe I'm closer to the typical side hustler that just kind of dreams of earning more, and then sitting and receiving passive income while they sit around somewhere on a beach or whatever. So profit first is probably sounds like the ideal way for everyone. That everyone wants to get the profit first, right?
Yeah, sounds like the ideal, but at the same time, you need the revenues first to be able to do profit first, right? And to grow the revenues, you
That's
need to
correct.
invest into your business. So you can either
Yeah.
invest your time or you can invest your money. And you only have so many hours in your day. You have 24 hours in your day, just like I
Mhm.
do, and just like my girlfriend does, and just like my dog does, and just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
So the only way you can scale at some point is just putting money into the business,
Again, why do you keep your profits down? Just so everyone can understand.
because profit is what you pay your taxes at the end,
Yes.
right? It's not the top line; it's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, because you have a choice, as we mentioned a couple times. You can either take $100 that you make in revenues and take it out and pay taxes on that, or you can take that $100 and spend it on some business expense. Ideally, something that would grow your business, right? So like an article or like a, I don't know, like advertising or something like that, something that will grow your business, and that means that you don't have to pay the 40% tax on the revenues, because your profit is the revenues minus the expense, and it also means that you laid another brick on top of whatever structure you already built. So you took your side hustle or your business one step closer to being bigger, right? Or you've grown it another step.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, it's really about how you look at your side hustle, because some people just want to build a side hustle and kind of have it be, like you just said, have it be a passive income and sit on the beach sipping whatever, Coke Zero or something in my case, and
Yeah. Mango drink.
mango drink, and kind of have it just maintain some sort of lifestyle without
Mhm.
having to put many hours into it, like the 4 hour work week. I'm sure a lot of people have read that.
Yeah. The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, but I think that's for a long time that was kind of my dream. But the more I started working on this thing, the more I'm just realizing that to me the fun part is really just building something. And
Hmm.
I think to do that it's more about stopping to think about it as a side hustle, as quote unquote doing a side hustle, and thinking about it as building a business. And I think that completely changes everything.
That's a good. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at it. Wow, I don't have a lot of things to say on this topic. I'm just like, no, to me it's fascinating, but it's just like I'm like literally wading in the water, not in the I'm in the shallow end of it with all my experience.
Yeah, I think you're doing it to quite an extent, right? Because you hire writers to write content for you, and you buy deals on AppSumo all the time and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't, I guess I'm a little too easygoing with it. Like, I don't have a set number or a certain like profit or like a certain amount of expenses to keep, even though I've been told to like, I should increase my expenses. I haven't actively done that because I guess like most other people or beginners would assume or think, I proceed with my side hustles as a hobby more so as like a serious business. So I'm not really like optimizing everything.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's good. I think it, again, as we talked numerous times, I think it really comes down to preferences, right? Like if you really enjoy your main job, your job, and this kind of complements it, then I think that's a great way to make some extra money and to have some fun along the way. And I think others will. Maybe there are people that hate their job and the side hustle is kind of their side street to freedom or something.
Mhm.
And in my cases, I just love building stuff, like building systems, building sites, building whatever it is. But seeing things grow is like what really motivates me and makes me want to grow those things even further. So I think it really depends on the person.
With everything we talked about, I want to go back to this just to really drive the point home. Does having a side hustle really mean you have financial freedom? The reason why I ask this is, there's a lot of advertisements, there's a lot of books, for example, Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, that are trying to inspire you to be your own kind of boss or whatever and start your own little business. But with everything, again, with everything that we talked about, does that really mean that you have financial freedom? And I think based on what we talked about, is the answer is that it's not a clear yes and no. Yes, you do get to earn money, but say 40% of that money is not yours. So it's a bit more complicated than it's portrayed to be.
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated, but you're also forgetting the fact that whatever money you earn at your job, it's also not like 100% of it is yours. It just
Yeah.
you only get paid 60%, and it feels like that's the 100%, but you got to realize that just 60% of what you made.
Yeah. So with all the advertisements, with all the YouTube motivational videos of you got to be your own, you got to start your own thing, I guess they kind of gloss over this part. No one really talks about, taxes or how to proceed with your profits?
Yeah, I think that's a very loaded question that there's
Yeah.
many things to unpack, and it's almost its own separate episode because
Yeah.
like again, I think entrepreneurship and I think building side hustles is one inroads into it, or is one way of it. Is really the only option to make like disproportionate amount of money compared to the time that you're spending on things in the short term, right?
Hmm.
So let's say you're making $40,000 in your job right now, right? What are the chances that you're going to be making $60,000 in the same job next year?
Probably unlikely unless you have a very big promotion.
Yeah, essentially zero, right? Like unless something super extraordinary happens. But now imagine your site's making you $40,000 a year, and you're continuing to grow it, or you start a new site or something. Then I'd say the odds that you can actually take that $40,000 a year and turn it into $60,000 next year are pretty high if you know what you're doing. And I think that's the critical part.
Yeah.
Like just like with everything, not everybody succeeds with these things, right? So there's probably disproportionately more failures than there are successes. But it also doesn't mean that it can be learned and it can be done. And I think if you learn it and if you do it, then it's definitely a more direct way to financial freedom, like you said in your question, than doing a regular job is, right? So I agree with that 100% in terms of the ads that you see around.
Hmm.
It's also a way to like time freedom and things like that, and to kind of not necessarily making your income passive, but making it less dependent on or less tied to the hours you work and less tied to the actual time periods that you work during, right? But at the same time, saying that you can go out there and start a side hustle or start a business or start whatever, and next year you can be sipping margaritas in like Maldives or something.
Hmm.
That's highly unrealistic, even if COVID-19 passes and we can travel around actually.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think you have to be aware that the ads are just ads that are meant to sell courses and stuff like that. But at the same time, you have to be aware that there is a little bit of truth to them, and that is the fact that I think the road to some sort of time or financial or whatever independence or freedom or whatever you want to call it, I think it's definitely more direct if you go the entrepreneurship path than if you go the employee path, right? But that doesn't mean that either is worse or better, right? It just means they're different. Some people prefer one, some people prefer the other.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I wanted to really drive this point home because, again, with all the advertisements that we see on YouTube and whatever, like all the top gurus will be like, oh, blah, 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 financial freedom, blah, 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 business success. You have the pictures of the Learjet and trips to like tropical islands. Whereas probably for them, it's a business expense to get a Learjet and travel to the tropical islands because they're going to use that as advertisement material for their courses.
Yeah.
But they're not exactly going there because they can on a whim.
Yeah, and again, they're just trying to sell you a course. So yeah, so you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the more sober episodes of how to start your own or like how to deal with your own side hustle.
Yeah,
Because sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and like if you want true financial freedom, then it really depends on many things, right? It depends on how much money do you actually want. Like,
Hmm.
can you live off comfortably on $40,000 a year, or can you live comfortably on $200,000 a year, or whatever? And like generally, you can take out like 4% of your portfolio value every year without technically ever running out of money. So to make like $40,000 truly financially independently, sort of, or truly like without having to work at all, like having retired, you'd essentially need $1 million in your bank for every like $40,000
Hmm.
that you want to make every year. So it takes quite some time to get there, I guess.
And probably won't get there with just a side hustle alone.
Yeah, and that comes back to the point of like if you want to do it fast, then I think entrepreneurship is the path, because it's very hard to make that sort of money for a regular job, right? Within a span of a few years, it or to make and save, because you also have to live off something during that period of time that you're saving the money.
Yeah.
It's not to say doing it for entrepreneurship is easy. It's
Infinitely harder.
it's probably infinitely harder and infinitely and the odds are much smaller. But at the same time, if you succeed at it, then it's faster.
So if you were to wrap this up with some key insights for a person that has just started a side hustle, what would you boil it down to?
It's a good question. So I think first of all, decide what your priorities are, or what your goals are, or what do you want to do. So in terms of finances, so are you looking to pay off your student loan? If that's your goal, then how much do you need to make per month? Um, are you just looking to have something fun to do on the side and you want to build like a media company down the road, or what it is that you want to do? And that will kind of guide your decisions in terms of taking money out or reinvesting them back, or whatever, right? And the other thing, and perhaps the most important thing, is realize that every dollar you take out in profit is not all yours. So like 30, 40, whatever percent of it is the government's, which leads me to if you take out money in profit, then make sure to save for taxes and to set money aside. And what was it? There was one more point. Yeah, and finally, learn how business expenses work, because I think once you start understanding that, then your thinking will switch from how can I make the most money for myself to how can I invest money back into my business to grow it.
Yeah.
And I think that is a game changer.
I think that last point, it is a game changer. If you stop thinking about, oh, I have to pay, this much, I have to buy this, but rather investing this kind of money will give me more return on my investment. Where would you guide a person to learn more about how to deal with business expenses the smart way?
I guess the first thing you should do if you're making like at least I'd say $600, $700, $800 a month, or $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, is just talk to a professional. Talk to a CPA in the US, or talk to like a tax accountant in your country, and just learn more about your tax situation. Just learn about considering the salary you currently make, like how much of it is going to taxes, how much in taxes will you have to pay on every incremental dollar that you make for your side hustle, and like what are some of the best ways you can minimize the tax. And then you just got to understand your business. So you got to understand what drives your revenues. So is it buying more articles, or is it paying somebody to do link building for you, or is it, I don't know, buying the latest gadget so that you can review it, or paying for ads, or whatever it is, and figure out what the main driver is, and just keep throwing money at it and repeat, and hopefully the thing will keep growing, and you will be able to make a decent income with your side hustle and potentially turn it into your main hustle.
That's that again, that last point is powerful, because now that I got intimately involved with my own taxes, right? The more I earned, the more like I was thinking like, oh no, that's another so and so that I have to pay. So like in a way, earning more kind of felt daunting and unmotivating. Just like, oh, I have I earned another dollar, that's another like 40 cents or whatever I have to pay. It kind of feels like as you grow, the burden grows, right? However, if you do take a look at how to reinvest your money better, it's no longer a burden. It's more of a, how do I grow this thing, and how do I apply my finances? How do I apply the profits the right way back into the business, rather than looking at it as a burden?
Exactly. And that's a great point. I think like we were talking about the computer, like we were talking about content, I think you got to flip from viewing taxes as something you pay and start looking at it as discount on whatever you have to buy for a business. And then you look at like a $2,000 computer on the internet, and you're like, oh, okay, so this computer is not $2,000. It's actually 1,300 or whatever. So it's all about being optimistic. That doesn't change the fact that at some point you will have to pay some sort of taxes, but it makes you feel better for.
You should definitely write a book on this, on how to flip business expenses into optimism. That should be the title of the book.
Taxes, the happiest on the planet.
How to turn your business expense frown upside down into a smile. The top 10 ways. Yeah. All right. I don't have any particular insights myself, because Keishi here is the expert between the two of us on accounting and finance. So I was more so in here for the education, just as you listeners. And if you do want to start your own side hustle, be sure to visit the notes for this show. The URL is sidehustlesandstuff.com/E15. We recommend Bluehost as a hosting service where you can buy your own website and launch your project into reality, whether you're selling shirts, art, or if you want to do affiliate marketing, if you want to write up reviews or something. You always need a website. That could be your business expense that it can become tax deductible. This has been the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast with Keishi and Yuriy.
Talk to you later.
Later. It's blooper time.
Recording now.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Side Hustles. Did you laugh? again.
Yep. Somebody earns $50,000 a month, and they again, that's a pretty good salary, isn't it?